All right, guys. Our next guest deserves a ton of respect and doesn't get anywhere near the credit he deserves. A lifelong martial artist and former fighter himself, he now runs Freestyle MMA in Windang, New South Wales, as he helps prepare UFC featherweight champion and number one pound for pound fighter in the world, Alex Volkanovski, for his massive, massive super fight at UFC 284 against Islam Makhachev for the lightweight belt. Joe Lopez, welcome for the very first time to Submission Radio. What an honor, man. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for having me on.
Now, Joe, first things first, man. Is this true? Like, have we been technically saying your name wrong? Is your name actually Jose? Is that right?
Yeah, technically it is, but everyone calls me Joe.
Tell us the story. How did we go from Jose to Joe?
Look, when I first grew up in Australia, it was pretty. They had trouble pronouncing the name Jose, so the teachers and that just called me Joe to make it easier. That was it. I think most Jose's used to be Joe back in the day.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you know, the legend himself, Joe Aldo, recently retired, so there's a lot of famous Jose's. But you prefer Joe, right? We're not about to start going back to Jose. You prefer Joe, is that right?
What I've been for, I'm going to be 60 in a few weeks. So, yeah, it's been there for a long time.
Yeah, I remember when I was playing footy, Joe, and my surname's hard to pronounce. Everybody would just call me Schnitzel.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be Shkarada, but that's fine. Okay, so before we talk about Alex and his massive fight against Islam, you yourself have a fascinating story and backstory. Like, let's get into it right now. Like, is it true you got into martial arts while trying to find the secrets to the death touch?
No. I think they just got taken out of contents by a reporter. Just back in the day, there wasn't that much. It's not like today where you got YouTube and there's a lot of information out there. Back in those days, everything came from books or magazines or anything you can read. And the kung fu guys used to sort of have this. Try to put it over all the other martial artists that they had this death touch and all that. And I went and trained with them a few times. And I went, man, this is all bullshit, That's where it all came about, I've been lucky enough to travel around the world and train in a lot of different places. And, a good story is I got to train with the great Joe Louis, the first ever heavyweight kickboxing.
Wow.
Whoa.
And he tells the story that there were two kinds of black belts, and he'd fought a lot of them. And he said the ones that looked up and the ones that looked down. And he said, I was fortunate enough to always look down. And that sort of puzzled me a bit. And then he goes, yeah, after I knocked them out. And these guys were challenging him, that they had all these secret powers and all that, and that always stuck with me because I was I was only a young man when I did it. And it always stuck in my head.
That's crazy, man. That's awesome. Joe Louis. And you mentioned like the traveling. Dude, you went all over the place. I saw Egypt, Spain, England, India, Thailand, Malaysia, France. What was sort of, I don't know, what was the place or area that sort of stood out to you the most along that journey when you were, basically living the martial arts lifestyle?
Thailand was good. I sort of went over there in 1988, I was probably one of the first guys to go over. There wasn't many, and camp I was in, I made a deal with the trainer that I would teach him English if and he taught me Thai, Thai boxing, and went from there. India was a really sort of magical place. I probably had the worst times there, but probably the best experiences. It's a very hard. Back in those days, it was a very hard country.
When you say worst times, what do you mean? What was tough about it?
Look, I haven't been there for a long time, but I was there. It was a hard country. Again, there was no technology, so if you had to, I used to say, okay, I'm going to buy a bus ticket to go to the next place, and that's going to take me all day because first I'd have to buy a bus ticket, then you'd have to. There was the English when they were there. They brought out these just to give everybody a job. You'd have to line up maybe 6 times, 7 times after you found the place. You'd be walking down the street and you sort of had a basic idea off a map, but you'd wanted to make sure you were going in the right direction. And you'd ask, and one person would point left, and the next person would point right. And you just Yeah, it was a long day just to get a bus ticket or anything you wanted to do. It took a long time, and then being a Caucasian in India, everybody thinks you're rich, so everybody's just off you. They call it bakshish. You got more than me, so give me some. And yeah, it was hard. A lot of people, it would freak them out. I just took it in my stride, but it was hard. I remember the first time when I flew out, I said to myself, I'm never coming back here ever again. And then 4 months later, I was back there.
Yeah, it sounds like the kind of place where you could have an authentic experience, especially back in those days. And your journey led you to not only work security in place, like in pubs and stuff, but you also bodyguarded for people like Ice-T, Deep Purple, Michael Hutch, the Ramones, Run DMC, or the Rage Against the Machine. I got to ask, what was your favorite person or group to bodyguard, and what are some of the crazy stories that you remember, especially back in those days when it was almost like a different time before cell phones and the internet was what it was,
Yeah, well, it was different. I think people were, I guess, less accountable because, no one was standing there videoing, so people were a lot more themselves, and you'd see their personalities. I mean, there's so many different stories, Yeah, I haven't thought about that for a long time. My head's been focused more on fighting in the martial arts. I'd have to really think about it,
I imagine there would have been some crazy. Is it true that I don't know if you remember this one? Is it true that one time a patron that maybe it was you or someone else ejected from a pub came back for revenge with a machete? Is that right?
Oh, he had a machete and a gun.
Oh, what happened? Tell us the story there.
Well, he got ejected, and when the cops cops finally caught him, that he had I think it was speed in those days. I don't think it was ice. And he'd been ejected, and he didn't take it lightly, and he came back. But he was smashing things on the way down to the pub to come and get us, and on the way down, the cops stopped him, and it was a standoff between him and the cops. And finally dropped the gun. I had to go to court as a police witness and everything else.
Damn.
As why we ejected him and everything else. He was actually throwing glasses inside there was a band playing. I think it was the Choir Boys and Choir Boys and the Radiators it was. And he was. I just seen some glasses flying around, and I finally figured out who was throwing them, and I grabbed him and I threw him out, and the police were there, and they they told him to go away, and he didn't take it lightly, and he came back with a machete and a gun.
I feel like this Roadhouse movie should be Conor McGregor and you, Joe, not Jake Gyllenhaal.
It was a bit like Roadhouse back in the day, I'll tell you. Anybody that worked in that era would have experienced that. Like I said, people were a lot less accountable, so things were a lot different. I think the onset of cameras and phones has made security work a lot easier. I still own the company. I just got other guys managing it for me now, but it's still what would you call it? It's a lot easier job today than it was back in the day. I'll tell you that much. But I used to enjoy it. I think you get off on like a guy pointed out to me once, on the adrenaline run of when someone's, after the situation's defused and it's all gone, you just get an adrenaline dump. And I think in the end you start sort of chasing that thing. Not that you want anything to happen, especially as you get older, but when it does happen, you actually get you feel good.
Yeah, 100%. Well, especially looking at hindsight, knowing that all right, the situation's over. We live to tell the tale. You can kind of laugh about it. Was that the situation that sort of got you out of doing security for pubs, or you kept working after that, after the dude that came with a gun and a machete?
Oh, no, I kept going. That was just another night. I've had guns drawn me a couple of times, actually. It's funny to say it now, but at the time you shit yourself. Anybody that says you don't, they're fucking fooling themselves. I remember I was walking some guys had been ejected, and I just followed them out, make sure they left the venue, because I used to manage this really huge venue, and And I wanted to make sure they left, and I just followed them at a safe distance, and they got in their car, and I started walking back, and as I walked back, the car pulled up next to me, and the window wound down, and a gun pointed out the window, man. I just jumped behind a column, and they're going, "Oh, you're hiding like a pussy," and everything else. I'm fucking home for my pussy.
Yeah. This isn't Mr. In Between where, everything kind of works. I was going to ask you, like, you'd be a good person to ask, like, what do you do if someone pulls a gun? Because you see all this stuff on like Instagram, like, oh, grab the wrist and do this and that. And there's all the memes of like people trying that and then they wake up in heaven. And then there's, I can't remember the dude's name, the guy who owns Dust. People obviously laugh at like some of those type, but like in reality, if someone pulls a gun, what do you do?
Look, insecurity, and I guess any kind of thing, your mouth is your best weapon, and you try and talk your way out of it.
Yeah,
that's got to be the best solution. With any situation, any violent situation, your mouth has got to be your best weapon, and if you can talk your way out of it instead of punching your way out of it, it's a lot better outcome for everybody.
I feel like you and Barca need to connect because he's got a lot of great bouncer stories as well. You guys could really have a good conversation about that. But let's talk about Alex Volkanovski, man, because I just want to go back in time a little. What was your first impression of Volko when you first met him? Do you remember that moment?
Yeah, for sure. He'd come actually to the gym before and done a couple of sessions, and
he was playing footy at the time. He was like heavyweight Volk.
He came back. He'd actually, he just wanted to get fit for football, and he was always a really nice, respectful guy. And how could I say? He was just very nice and respectful. I couldn't say a bad word about him. He was built like a tank. And that's about it. The thing that stood out for me and was when we had like a seminar at our gym, and then after the seminar we had a few different gyms come down, and then we had an open sparring session, and he came to the open sparring session, and I always remember I had a heavyweight that had a couple of fights, and there was a young heavyweight here from the area who had I think 5-0 record, and was looking for he was the next best thing. And I remember I was taping the gloves up on my heavyweight, and Alex was already gloved up, and the other guy's coach threw him into the cage before I could get to him. And I remember I was trying to run to the cage to stop it, but the spar had started, and I wanted, the experienced guys to have a go first before I put Alex in. It was his first spar, and next minute Alex has submitted this guy, Oh, geez. And then I think through the round, I think submitted him like 3 times. And I thought, man, this kid's got a bit of potential. This guy's supposed to be the next best thing. And Alex has submitted him 3 times. And, after the session was over, I just remember saying to him, I go, man, have you ever thought about having a fight? And he goes, oh, it's always been a dream of mine, to have a fight. So I think 3 or 4, 6 months later, we had him a fight. And I guess the rest is, history.
It's insane, like how, he wasn't a guy who was kind of like, necessarily did martial arts growing up, and it was something that he just fell into. And then now he's the number 1 pound for pound fighter in the world. It's just crazy. And also just like, I know Volk was bigger then, but just like the image of like him taking on a heavyweight, that would be like Volk, fighting like or sparring like a Taito Vasa and just like, getting the better of him. Like that's a crazy visual. Do you find it only fitting though, right, that all these years later, after that story and that first sparring, that he's going up against a guy like Islam Makhachev in a super fight where, the way it's being billed is like, hey, Islam's so much bigger. Volk's going up in weight, he's finding a bigger guy.
Well, I mean, Alex's first 2 or 3 fights were at middleweight,
Yeah.
And he had to cut to get to middleweight, And I always remember his first fight. We got to the venue before everybody else, and we're standing out the front. And the guy he was fighting was at the door at the same time we got there. And I looked at the guy and I said, "Oh, there's no way we're fighting this guy. This guy's too big." And they looked at us. And this guy had, all the neck tattoos. He was looked like a bad man, And he looked at us. He goes, "I'm not fighting him. He's too small." And lo and behold, it was that guy,
Wow.
And I remember he was standing across those days. It was in a ring we fought, and the the guy was standing across the ring and, putting his hand across his neck saying he's going to kill him and all this. And, I mean, I think he lasted a minute and a half or not even. I think Alex's all his amateur fights, I think you could put them, they didn't last 5 minutes if you put them all together. It was sort of like a Mike Tyson, where he had the 20 knockouts in 20 minutes or half an hour.
Yeah.
It was similar to that, that's the vision I had. And he was sort of built like a little Mike Tyson, short, stocky, very powerful, had this big overhand right.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Because, I feel like a lot of the thing with this fight is promotion, right? Like the UFC trying to build this narrative about the size difference as well. And like Casper said, Volko coming up, when a lot of people realize that this size difference, like you just mentioned, maybe not as significant as what other people think. I want to hear your thoughts there when you hear people talk about the size difference being a big factor here and Alex being too small to fight Islam. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And what are people kind of missing here when they make those kinds of statements?
Look, I think, and a lot of, I've been around Alex, from day one, so I've got to see him spar all different and a variety of people. And I've seen coaches say to their fighters as they're, trying to do this, do that, and they don't realise what it's like when Alex is standing in front of you. He's a different beast. You don't know whether he's moving left or he's moving right, and it really it takes your game plan out. Coaches say do this, do that, but they can't do it because Alex is not allowing them to because of his movement. He's different. And then the other thing is Alex has always been strong. I mean, super, super strong. He's just got, I've always said, his gifts always have been, his understanding of distance and timing, and then he's always been superhumanly strong. And the funny thing is when we're getting in fight week, when most fighters are getting, weaker and depleted, he actually gets stronger for some reason. I think he just gets into his head that it's game time. And, I usually hate fight week, because not so much these days because I've got the younger guys to be his partner. But back in the early days, I'd be his partner. And I remember in the back change room, even the first 2 or 3 UFCs, the guy, he'd be throwing me around and doing this. And the guy's going, hey, take it easy on him, man. He's an old man. And, I enjoy it, I must admit, I must be a glutton for punishment, but, now I'm getting a bit, the injuries just take that little bit longer to heal, so I'll get one of the other guys to get in there and they can get thrown around and bashed, Frank Hickman's always good for that.
Yeah, because that mentality, I feel like there's a number of things that people are overlooking when it comes to Alex, but that mentality is one of the things that I think is super rare in the sport. Like he's just got that mental state that a lot of fighters don't have. You could see he's got the ability to want to be in there. He turns on, like you said, leading into the fight. But I also know that mentality got him through a lot of difficult times. Like it took him a while to get signed to the UFC. It took him a while to get to the position that he's at. It took him a while to get his first title shot even. Just quickly before we get back onto this fight with Islam, take us through a couple of those hard times. I imagine you guys would have been together through some difficult times. I know there were times where, you guys must have been frustrated because you were on this win streak in the UFC. He's not even in the UFC yet. Or other times when he's in the UFC and it looks like the title shot is so far away. How did you guys both get through those times together? Because I imagine that a lot of people in his position would have quit and done something else, with him having a family, having to provide for his family, and sometimes things not looking, like he'll be the number 1 pound for pound fighter in the world and maybe potentially a double UFC champion.
Yeah, well, I think the one, the first one that was sort of really, was a bit of a, what would you call it? Well, it was UFC Brisbane, the Mark Hunt Bigfoot card.
Oh, yeah.
And the AFC was on the day before. And I looked at the dates and we had a few options to fight. And I said, look, we'll take this AFC fight. It was against Jamie Malarkey of all people. And we said, look, we'll get ready for fight camp and hopefully someone gets hurt or we get a call up and we can be on the card. and we were doing a bit of training with Richard Walsh, Richie, and one of the guys got hurt, and Richie said, let's put our name forward. And there was a management company that wanted to manage Alex, but we turned it down. And well, I'm not going to name any names. Anyway, they said, no, Alex is already signed to fight, but we didn't even sign a contract, and I made it quite clear to the promoter that if we get a call up, we're going, and he was all for it, because Alex was the AFC champion at that time. And unfortunately, this management company said, he signed somewhere else, and they ended up putting another fighter in, and Alex missed his spot. And Alex, I guess with anybody, you get depressed, and he thought about chucking it in.
Wait, so did the UFC actually want Alex? And you're saying the management company are like, oh no, it's not going to work out.
Yeah, wow. Walsh, said, mate, Alex is the man. Put him in, and Joe Silver at the time, reached out. He looked at his list and he goes, this management company's looking after him, and this idiot said, nah, Alex has got another fight, put this guy on. And Alex lost that opportunity, and I guess anybody would be, I was pissed off. Alex was pretty heartbroken. This was our chance to get in. People don't realise that, now we've got, the Contender Series and a few other avenues to get in. But in those days, especially in, the featherweight, lightweight division, they're very stacked divisions because everyone's, the average person's built that way, So you've got more fighters in those divisions than any of the other divisions, So it's very hard to make your way into those divisions. I remember, Alex tells, that he actually come to the gym, to train, and, he got really upset, and he just got in his car and he drove back home. You think he had a wife, a young kid. He had to move in with his mother because, just to save money, because he bought a house, but, to make payments and everything, he had to rent it out. So he didn't do it, nothing easy, So for, I don't know how long it was, 18 months, 2 years, he was living with his mum, because that was the only way he could support his dream was, to do things, So it's really, like I always say, Alex has never taken the easy road with anything, and anybody that says that is, doesn't know what they're talking about. He's always taken the hard fights. Back in the day, I was trying to get his numbers up, and I'd say, look, we'll take this hard fight, then we'll take a quick turnaround fight, an easy one, and then we'll take another hard one. No way, he wouldn't have a bar of it, He goes, no, I just want the good guys. I don't want to look like I'm, trying to pad my record. I'm going, you're not padding your record. We're just trying to get your pro record up as quickly as possible, because again, he started late, and I was just trying to get him, get as many fights up with him as possible. But, when you have hard fights, come the injuries and everything else.
It's amazing. And you can see like that mentality hasn't gone anywhere. It's the same mentality. Like look at him, chomping at the bit to fight Islam, a fight that a lot of people are like, dude, this is a really, really tough fight for him. And, you can see the way Volko talks about it and his interviews and everything. Like, it's almost like the news hasn't gotten to him. He sees it obviously as a challenge, but like his confidence is almost infectious. Sorry, Dennis, you were going to go? Is that right?
Oh yeah, sorry, Matt. Just to jump in, Joe, I'm just curious. Like that to me sounds like a really difficult time for Alex, but also for you as a coach to, keep him going and make sure that, all right, like more turnaround fights, let's keep the record going. Eventually we'll get signed, because we know it took a while to get there. How do you keep yourself in the right mindset to keep him going as well? Like, I imagine you'd have days yourself where you're like, what's the right thing to do here? Should I keep trying to get him into the UFC? What if this doesn't happen for the next 5-6 years? What if this management, we know how like these management companies can sometimes actually ruin people's careers. Like, how did you keep yourself going and moving forward in such a difficult situation?
Look, I guess I didn't think too far ahead. I was just playing what was in front of me and just kept that, and that's the way I am. I don't stress or I don't overthink things. If I do, I just snap myself out of it. I guess I'm a little bit different that way. Like I said, I never stress for a long time. So to to me, I guess I'm a little bit different, so I don't think like that, So I just kept the positive attitude that we were going to get in there, and if it wasn't today, it was going to be tomorrow. So I guess it's hard for me to think that, because I didn't think that at all. I just knew we would get in there, and in fact, Alex was going to Bali to a friend's wedding. He was the best man, and I don't know, I had this thing that we were going to get the call out, and it still gives me goosebumps. And I said to my wife and that, I said, "Do you want to go to Bali?" Of course, she said yes. And I went there, and I showed up a few days before. And when first day I got to Bali, I got the call, Alex is in. And it was, I brought the gear and everything to train, and that, we were just training every day. It was just super exciting because we'd finally got in, and it was going to happen. And then, then the news came that it was the card of the Philippines. He was going to fight John Tuck, and they cancelled that card. And that again, but we were in. So, and then our first fight was obviously Melbourne. But yeah, that was sort of strange. That I don't know. I just had this thing that, hey, something's going to happen, and it did. A lot of things happened, because a couple of weeks before that's when Alex said, when he went to the gym and he drove off and didn't train, and I rang him and he goes, it wasn't feeling well, and he didn't let on to me till later on that he actually was pretty depressed about, and he was thinking about giving it up, But I never gave up hope. I knew he'd get in, He deserved it, he always put in the hard work. And he was, sparring and training with a lot of UFC guys, and he was always holding his own, or if not, putting it over them. So he was, everybody was calling his name. Anybody that had trained with him or had sparred him knew he was destined to be there, and he was going to be a champion.
Mm. I remember him telling us about that story, and then also just even like in Melbourne meeting him for the very first time. Such a nice guy, just came off as like just one of the good guys, and he's carried that through to this day. Still as nice as he was when he made his debut. Just quickly before we get balls deep into this fight, or any deeper in this fight, don't forget about your balls. New year, new you, with our good friends at Manscaped. It's going to be super hot in Perth. I don't know if people realize that, but I'll tell you what, I had to shave my nuts the other day for a medical procedure that I had to go in for. That's just what you do when you go into hospital, into surgery. And dude, I feel great. I feel a lot better because it's hot as of the moment here in Melbourne. It's going to be even hotter in Perth. Don't let that be you walking around all day in ball soup. Get with the best, the Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0. The waterproof features, the LED light, the skin-safe technology, and if you get the Platinum Package 4.0, it is the best value for money you can get with Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the Ultra Premium body wash, the Ultra Premium 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner, the Ultra Premium deodorant, Crop Preserver anti-chafing ball deodorant, Crop Reviver ball spray toner, the free boxes, and the Shed Travel. Perfect for if you're single and if you're going on a whole bunch of dates, you want to keep yourself in check down there. Perfect for if you're married and you want to spice things up and in general be, everybody could do with a little bit of extra confidence. And Manscaped will get you there. Isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right, man. Even if you're going out to the beach, like one of the things I love about it is sometimes you got that weed hair just growing out on your body when you get a bit older. Just get rid of that thing straight away on your way out the door thanks to Manscaped. And the code word submission that gets you 20% off and free shipping today. Change your life for the better thanks to Manscaped. And we are presented by Manscaped. They're all legends out there. Change your life today. And guys, big fight is just around the corner. There's only one place to go to make your money, and that is at MyBookie. You guys can claim a special deposit bonus, dollar for dollar, all the way up to $1,000 if you use the code word submission now. And just quickly, Cats, I just want to have a look at these odds right here as we near the fight. Alex Volkanovski at MyBookie right now, plus 262. Islam minus 357. Which way will you guys be leaning? Who will you be putting your money on? And MyBookie is so awesome that you can even put on, you can even look at the potential fights coming up in the future. They already have a possible future fight between Israel and Alex. The rematch, Israel at a minus 150, Alex at a plus 120. What I'm trying to basically say is MyBookie is your place to make that cash. Use the code word submission today and make that money on the fights that are coming up. Can't wait to see these fights, Cass.
Make it rain, baby. Also, we're going to be flying to Perth in a couple of weeks, and you best believe we're going to be jumping on the old NordVPN to protect us from trackers and all sorts of dodgy Wi-Fis at airports, at Airbnbs, at hotels. Dude, I don't want the hotel reception staff looking at all the spicy websites that we're going to be, checking out. I mean, we're going on UFC.com and that's it because it's a work trip. But, let's be honest. After midnight, the spicy websites come out to play. And if you don't want your internet service provider to be looking at what you're downloading or watching, get a VPN like NordVPN. Or even if you want to, access, if you got Netflix and you're like, man, the range, the catalog of TV shows and movies is getting a bit thin. And then you're like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's watch American Netflix. You can just change your geolocation with one hit, one touch of a button with NordVPN. Bang. Now you got American Netflix. Or if you want to pay less money for the same thing like Dennis did with the NBA League Pass, one of the NBA League Pass, didn't want to pay full price for the NBA League Pass. So he changed his geolocation instead of Australia to like the Philippines or something, or Malaysia, where he got it way, way, way cheaper. And it works with a whole bunch of stuff, all sorts of products. It works with flights, works with pay-per-views, with all sorts of things. Isn't that right, Dennis?
Yeah, man. And if somebody takes your identity, it is the biggest pain in the ass, trust us, to change your license, your passport, all the stuff, like your PayPal logins, everything. Once that happens, so protect yourself with NordVPN and get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, plus a bonus gift right now by clicking the link in the description below, or go to nordvpn.com/submission. And by the way, it's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. So basically, these guys aren't just trying to take your money, lock it in, and run away with it. They want you to experience it first, and they have one of the best apps in the game as well. Go to nord.com/submission now.
There you go. All right, with that said, getting back into this fight, I'm curious, Joe, from everything that you've seen from Volko about his fights in training and everything, and even just the way that people build up Islam and rightfully so. What do you think is Volko's sort of biggest advantage or strength in this fight?
It's funny you say his size. He's small, so he's got very short legs, so it's very hard to hold him down. Very hard. He's got a lower center of gravity, so he's hard to take down. So these things that people are going against him are actually advantages to him. He's got short arms. His arms are not short. I guess, the people say he's got like a really long reach, but his reach comes because of his back. He's got a huge back and that. But yeah, those short limbs make it very, very hard to hold him and do things to him.
It's going to be a big moment of the fight if Islam does manage to find a way to take Alex down. I just want to sort of look at that moment potentially before it happens, because I know it's something that you guys would be working on throughout this camp. Just to put it bluntly, if Islam does get him down, what does it look like in your mind?
Well, we expect to be taken down.
Yeah.
100%. We're not worried about being taken down. We expect to be taken down. It's just whether Islam can hold us down. That is the key. We're not going there thinking it's a bad thing. I mean, it comes back to the Chad Mendes fight. Everyone was saying he's not going to have Chad Mendes' wrestling and everything else, and we went with that same mindset. Chad's going to get us down, but he's not going to hold us down, and that's exactly what happened. And we're going in there with that same mentality. We're not kidding ourselves, and we're not worried about, And I think that's what happens to a lot of fighters. They get that worried about the takedown that they can't play their own game. Where we're expecting to get taken down, we're just going to get back up and we're going to keep playing our game, and that's our mindset. It is with every fight. People say, "Oh, what are you going to do against this, or what are you going against that?" Look, we know what guys are good at and what they're not good at, but what they've got to worry about is Alex's game, because when Alex is standing in front of you, it's a different ball game to anybody else. I can tell you that. He's got different energy, he's got different movement, he's hard to read, his timing's good, his distance is good. But yeah, like I said, we expect to be taken down, but our thing is whether he can hold Alex down. That's really the way our mentality is going into this fight.
Did you see Khabib's video? Like, it was quite a while ago. It was like basically when the fight was even being talked about, where he was sort of basically urging Volko to, go on, train wrestling, and how Islam will basically dominate in the clinch with knees. he'll get Volko tired. He'll eventually take him down and submit him, basically just giving away the game plan almost like in such a confident way as if to say, look, this is what's going to happen. You can train all you want. It won't make any difference. I'm curious, as a coach, what did you make of like, such a bold assessment and then, just in general, that analysis of the fight and him kind of almost giving away the game plan?
Look, I didn't see the video,
okay.
Look, I don't do much social media and that. I watch a lot of tape and stuff, but I don't get into the politics and all that sort of stuff. But look, we're not taking Islam lightly. He's a formidable opponent. He's got great wrestling. He's looking at his things. Everybody's beatable, but again, I don't look too much into anything, because you can say one thing, but the game can change when somebody else is kneeing you or trying to do something to you. And the way Alex is training at the moment, and the guys he's training with, and he's holding his own or even dominating some of these guys. It's scary stuff. Islam's. Like I said, he's a great opponent and everything else, but so is Alex, So I'm looking forward to a great fight. Like I said, I'm not taking him lightly, and like I never take anybody lightly. But yeah, I think we're going to get our hand raised in the end.
Do you see any holes in Islam's game? Like, people obviously talk about him as this monster and Khabib's successor, and people are expecting him to reign for such a long time. Since you watch so much tape, is there anything that you've noticed and you're like, well, this is something that people might not be realizing?
No, look, I don't want to give too much away,
Sure.
but look, Islam, like I said, he's a good opponent, and let's just see how he handles Alex's footwork and everything else. I can't see Alex getting tired. He's got a gas tank for days. He's getting shark tanked at the gym, at least 3 times a week, and he's pulling up, good. In fact, the other guys get more tired than he does. He does wear a lot of people out. He's just sheer tenacity. And the thing with Alex is, sometimes he'll start. His earlier rounds are the slower rounds. As it progresses, he actually gets stronger and faster and better. Which, like I said, he's different to most other people that I've seen and trained with. He's a different beast. When you should be going down, he's getting stronger.
Different beast, and also 155 Volk. Got to ask you, what's the big difference between 145, 155 Volk? What are some of the sort of key cool things or advantages that you're noticing here?
Oh, look, his strength, he's got stronger, obviously. We're not going to go and try and come in. Look, I've seen Alex come in heavier, and sometimes I think just because you're heavier doesn't make you better. I know what weight Alex sits at optimally, where he performs at his best over the years. And I want to stick close to that weight, just because you're 3 or 4 kilos heavier is not going to make you better, because it might slow your movement down, because whether you're carrying 4 kilos of muscle or 4 kilos of fat, you still have to carry that weight, and that weight could slow you down. It could stop your movement. So we're not looking to get heavier or bigger, because Alex could definitely do that, Alex's worst performances have always been when he's been too heavy, and it took me a while to get that to his head, but now he's got it. He knows that he works best at this weight, a certain weight, and we'll probably come in at that weight, maybe 1 or 2 kilos heavier, but he could weigh in at 80 plus kilos and be the same weight as Islam, but is he going to move the same weight? I don't think so, so it's a fine-edged sword how we're going to do it, but we've got good nutritionists, and we've got a game plan, and we'll stick to it.
All right. Well, we don't want to take up your entire morning and then afternoon, Joe. So we'll let you go. Just quickly, what's the prediction? How do you see it getting done?
Oh, look, I think it'll probably go to distance. I'm not, as much as I'd like to finish early, but you never know. And it'll be a decision to Volks, I'd say.
Well, Joe, congratulations, man. I mean, your journey is incredible. Of course, everybody needs to follow you guys at freestyle_MMA. Everybody internationally needs to check out what the amazing stuff that you guys are doing. And of course, check out Alex Volkanovski versus Islam Makhachev for the UFC lightweight belt at UFC 284 in Perth on February 12th, 11th for all our friends in the US. It's going to be a historic moment down under. Mr. Lopez, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thanks for having me on, boys.